Well, thank you, Sean, and welcome everybody this morning to the NSA webinar, breakfast webinar session. One today that we're concentrating on UK sheep breeds in the world, serving international demand for sheep genetics. A really fascinating subject, and I'm sure that we could hopefully have a really interesting discussion about the opportunities that are out there for UK sheep genetics. As many people we know, in the UK, we have a plethora of breeds and crosses, but in my opinion, and I am biased, we do have some of the top sheep genetics in the world, and that it doesn't go unnoticed by our colleagues farming in different parts of the world who are really keen to access those genetics to improve their breeds of sheep. This morning's webinar will take the form of a discussion, presentations by three really interesting speakers, and then we're going to open it up to a Q&A for people to join in and hopefully tap into their knowledge and expertise. Firstly, though, I'd like to note that all these NSA breakfast webinars are very kindly sponsored by Roy Thorne Solicitors, who have a long association of working with the National Sheep Association and their members and providing support to their members when and as is needed. So we continue to thank them for their support in these webinars. Now, as I mentioned, assembled a really top panel of speakers who have tremendous experience and expertise in this area. We have Rob Grinnell, who is from the UK Export Certification Partnership, Geraint Thomas, who's the Chief Executive of AB Europe, and last but not least, Edward Adamson, who is the Regional Development Manager for the NSA in Northern Ireland. But more importantly, for the purposes of today's webinar, is a farmer and sheep breeder who has personal experience in this field. Now, I've been incredibly lucky in my lifetime to travel the world looking at sheep in various parts and climates and their impact on there, and how well sheep are needed and part of the local infrastructure and as the country's agricultural needs provide to them. Now, and over that time, I've always been impressed by people's knowledge of the UK sheep industry and how it could impact on theirs. And I think post-Brexit and post-COVID, hopefully the UK will have stuff to offer and to the global marketplace. Because, as I think most people realise, we have a fantastic selection with all these breeds. We do have a fantastic selection of genetics that are available. We have native breeds to the UK that have been bred and developed for their own personal circumstances and situations, that their unique attributes can help develop in different parts of the world. We also have imported breeds that have been bred and developed with fantastic UK stockmanship over generations to improve that original product and now make some of them, in my opinion, world leading, that people are now coming to us to source their genetics from. Hopefully, if we can ever move on to a more normal situation post-COVID and post-Brexit, I think there are fantastic opportunities for the UK sheep industry to export our genetics. So what this webinar is about is to give people an idea and understanding of what opportunities are out there, how we can go about to access them, and some of the questions that customers are likely to ask and want to know, and how we can provide genetics on a plate for our customers worldwide. As I mentioned, we have three speakers. They'll each take it in turns to do their presentation. I think then we'll have the questions and answers at the end of the three presentations. I'll do my best to keep it flowing and share it at that stage. First up is Rob Grinnell. As I say, he works for the UK Export Certification Partnership and is going to tell us all what we need to know and how we do it. So Rob, over to you, please, and good luck.
Morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Charles. Thank you to the NSA for inviting me along to do this presentation. I'm hoping it won't be too dry and boring for everybody, but basically what I'm going to try and do is give you a little bit of a background into just how the UK partnership works and what we can do for your sales abroad. Hopefully everybody can see the screen now. Is that just give me a nod? That's grand. Thank you. So yeah, so I'm Rob. I'm a vet, retired from practice, but now working as a consultant with UK ECP and UK TAG. All these different acronyms are a little bit confusing and they confuse me along the way, so don't worry about them too much. But the UK Export Certification Partnership basically works with various areas of industry to produce the documentation. And the UK TAG is a company that works to promote overseas sales. So who we are, yeah, this is it. We're Export Certification Limited is part of the UK ECP. It works with these various bodies that are listed below, and I'll run through those, and also I work with British Livestock Genetics, which was Henry Lewis in the past and Richard Saunders now still, and we will all work together to try and promote these sales. We liaise with the UK livestock industry to establish export market priorities. That means that we're looking at places where there can be big sales, really. We might get an inquiry for 10 doses of semen from Montserrat, but really we should be looking at those places where we can sell 10,000 doses, and that's why we end up prioritizing. We work with direct contact into DEFRA, Department of International Trade, AHDB, NSA, the genetic centers and breed societies. And without this cooperation in the partnership, we wouldn't be as effective as we are. We discuss the requirements for bilateral agreements on export health certification, and we promote the British livestock through webinars and trade shows where people can attend, and sometimes I go as part of UKEP, but it may well be breeders as well themselves going out. Some of you may well have been to overseas trade shows. So how does it actually work and why does it work? I suppose it works because we have the HDB who we work in partnership with and whose fund UK ECP work, along with their representatives in different continents who help to make contacts locally. So part of the levy money comes into UKEP to help keep this all running along. And it's similar with the NSA. We have to work with them. It's vital that we get the support from them, and they are brilliant at this, and they have the expertise and the contacts within the industry. And again, there's an input in finances from your membership money into UKEP to keep on promoting this. We also deal almost daily, but certainly weekly, with the semen collection centres, and because of their specialism and expertise on previous exports, we're able to draw down on that and make sure we can produce these contacts and make use of them, pushing the sales forward. And all of this adds value to the breeding sector. It's good use, really. It increases the global reach and the reputation of the UK livestock, and it assists the membership of each of the associations that we've been mentioning. So how does it actually work in practice? Usually there's an expression of interest from a breeder within the UK or overseas. So it may be somebody here who's had an inquiry directly to them, or it may be somebody from overseas that gets in touch with us. There'll be a request for semen or embryos or live export. And currently, although there was a little glitch earlier on in time post-Brexit, live exports are possible. It's just not really that feasible into the EU at the moment because there's no border control post. But actually, we are still able to live export animals, albeit there's some encouragement to use genetics rather than live export. At Export Certification Limited, we'll look at the previous work done and we'll produce a draft document that we can send off. So again, recently we've had inquiries for goats to Nepal, and so we will have taken out documents that we've used for local countries, so India maybe, and looked at what we can have done for them, produced the draft, sent it off. It goes via DEFRA and it goes to the embassy posts, who then present it to local ministry. The importing ministry comments and sends it back to Export Certification and DEFRA, and we work on that feedback to produce a certificate. And all of the existing export certificates can be found at this link. Basically put into Google APHA form finder, and it will come up with a page, maybe in the question and answers. I can run through this, but it'll come up with all of the certificates, and you can find the notes, how to apply, and sample certificates. So it works because of this partnership. It has all the skills, and we've put into a unique position to promote the UK sheep industry, and the fact that the UK sheep are such a quality product, as Charles has said at the beginning, helps us to make these sales. It's important to bear in mind that some of the things that get in the way, and it helps if we're in the Scrapie monitor scheme, or if we know the genetics of Scrapie. A great number of the countries that will be looking to import from us here will require that either your ARR sheep or Scrapie monitored. And there are lists of countries that are have declared Scrapie. They obviously don't tend to be quite so worried. There's lists of countries that don't have Scrapie, or haven't declared it at least, and they will have this requirement in. The fact that we're already in the MV scheme helps enormously, because that helps promote, and it's a step that we can already say, right, we don't have this in these flocks. The enzootic abortion scheme will help with some countries, although most of the time it's just a declaration to say that there hasn't been any. All the countries will require that we have some sort of electronic ID, and they ask for proof that this is a national system at some stage during the actual production of the certificate. So we've already answered most of these before the certificates get to you, but that's helped. Some countries want recorded sheep, and I think Geraint will touch on this, but all of this produces this unique partnership that is working for the sheep industry. Things that are hindering us and get in the way along the way of these export systems, as I said, Scrapie monitoring. If we're struggling for Scrapie monitoring sheep or ARR, then that may well get in the way of you actually being able to export. Schmallenberg and Bluetongue, obviously we can have outbreaks that can cause issues with that, but at the moment we're flying along, so we're doing okay, so we won't try tempt fate with that. And then the availability of the commodity. Again, both Charles and Edward can touch on this, sorry, Geraint and Edward can touch on this, but it's support from the breeders. It's not easy, but it is worthwhile in the end, but it's support from breeders and societies that help us to push this forward. Without that, it's very difficult to actually get to the end sale. Currently, we've been working in South America, where over the last 18 months, 2 years, we've opened most of the countries that have expressed any interest in British genetics. Had huge input from AHDB representatives out there and from the semen collection centres, who are actively working to get sheep genetics out there. South Africa is on the verge of an agreement with Big Potential. I know the certificate is probably just about acceptable to them, and certainly is to us, and it's just on their desk in South Africa waiting for somebody to say yes. Eastern Europe, Russia, Kazakhstan are expressing huge interest in sheep, and we are in discussions with them. Unfortunately, there's a block of countries, the Eastern Economic Union or something, and we have to discuss everything with a block. And then, of course, North America, the small ruminant rule has been long awaited and has just come through now this year. So that means we've had huge pressure from the UK DEFRA and all the FACT people involved to actually get embryos into North America. I believe that Canada and Mexico will follow suit, because obviously they've been following to an extent what Big Brother in the middle is after. But this is going to produce massive potential for particularly heritage breeds to head over there. So with that, thank you so much for listening. Thank you to the NSA and AHDB for their support, and NSA for putting this on. And there will be a time for any questions. So please perhaps hold on to those until the end. And if anybody'd like to, I can share the screen for the APHA form finder. We can run through a little example of how that works. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Rob. Very, very interesting, most informative. and has given everybody a really good idea of what needs to happen, and what's out there, and giving people that first thing, because I think initially, there, as we all know at the minute, there is a lot of interest from abroad in a shrinking global marketplace, but it's how to put things in place, and how to do that and access. And that's part of this webinar today, to hopefully give people who haven't been experienced it the sort of wherewithal to be able to do that. As Rob said, we will take questions at the end. Thank you very much. And if there is a Q&A function hopefully on, and if people would be kind enough to put their questions in the Q&A function at the end of all three presentations, I'll then hopefully lead the debate and put the questions to the panelists, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to try and reply as in full and to the best of their advantage. Anyway, thank you again, Rob. Very, very interesting, really useful. We'll now move on to Geraint Thomas, who's the CEO of AB Europe, one of a number of animal breeding companies who have a tremendous knowledge and expertise in this work. They've been instrumental in trying to promote UK genetics abroad and help their customers sell their genetics into this market that we're all trying to exploit. Geraint has a tremendous knowledge and experience of what's needed and how people can go about it. So hopefully over the next few minutes he'll share that knowledge and expertise with us and put us all in a better place. Geraint, over to you.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for NSA for the invite to come and talk this morning with regards to exports of semen and embryos. I'm Geraint Thomas, CEO of Animal Breeding Europe. I've been with Animal Breeding Europe now for 15 years, whether it was when we were Innovus, and then latter AB Europe. AB Europe, who is AB Europe? We're most probably the UK's largest sheep and goat AI and ET company. We offer a wide range of assisted reproductive services for livestock, both sheep and cattle. We are most probably one of the leading providers of export freezing services in the UK. There's ourselves and another company. So there is two providers of export services within the UK. We annually carry out roughly 60,000 commercial AIs, 5,000 embryo transfers, and we freeze at approximately 65 doses of sheep semen for both domestic use and export. AB Europe has 3 centres based throughout the UK, one based in Scotland, which is an export facility as well, a main export facility based in Malvern, and we have a centre based in Northern Ireland. We provide AI and ET services throughout the UK, Northern Ireland, Ireland, and the rest of Europe. And we provide this as AI and ET services, but also training for other countries as they start to import more germplasm, such as semen and embryos. I think it's also important that we provide these services so they maintain good results with the embryos that they buy. This is just a quick slide to show export semen sales over the last 6 years. This shows that in 2017, 2018, we had a peak in sales, and this was really to do with the New Zealand semen and embryo certificates coming online. These guys were taking milk sheep, Texels, Hampshires, Suffolks, Charolais into their market, and then we had, once that sort of quietened down and platted off, and then we had a substantial increase in the last 2 years, and this is mainly down to the USA semen market coming online. These guys took a range of breeds from the normal terminal sires such as Texels, Charolais, Suffolks, but also the heritage breeds such as Kerry Hills, Shetlands, and then the hill breeds as well. There's been a keen interest in from the USA on Blackies and Cheviots. This market had been closed for a number of years, and as Rob has said, that the embryo market, the embryo certificate is likely to come on soon, so that will also have an increase in the number of embryos that is sold to that market. I think the number of doses frozen here is all down to AB Europe. I think realistically we could double that figure to most probably 14 1,000 straws of semen exported annually from the UK, if we take into consideration the other company that exports semen from within the UK. So where have we exported to in the last 12 months? We've exported semen and embryos to New Zealand, we've exported to Canada, EU, Brazil, Mexico, Paraguay, Chile, and Ireland. Export requirements. So this is most probably the most daunting task for anybody who gets an export inquiry from overseas. Start with the basics, I suppose, that the animal for export, with the exception of New Zealand, has to come from either a scrapie monitored flock or to be ARR. They can be MV accredited or non-MV accredited. We can bleed for MV status within the quarantine period and post-collection quarantine. The quarantine period for most countries pre-collection is 1 month, with the exception of the USA, which has a longer quarantine period, which is 4 months. So this is the period that the animal has to go into isolation prior to entering the semen collection centre. Other things that need to be done, and this is usually working alongside your vet and with blood tests, is the CLA status of the flock, the Yoni status of the flock, and the Axeta status of the flock. Brazil is slightly different, that they will not accept ARRs, that the flocks have to be scrapie monitored. And then New Zealand is slightly different again, where they will accept group 1s and group 2 semen donors for export. So what do overseas breeders want? Overseas breeders are interested in figures. That, you know, a number of breeders will be interested in EBVs and selecting animals on EBVs. The visual perspective, so the show animals, there's quite a big market on, you know, the way the animals look from a show point of view. The UK prices catch a lot of people's attention, as they are unique to the rest of the world of the value of the stock that we've got. And also the volume of export, you know, the volume at the end of the day when you're looking at exports is very important. It is important when you're speaking to clients and making sure that they're after a certain volume of semen. So there's exports of 10 doses is not cost effective for the purchaser, and it's not really cost effective for the breeder. So we need to be working on having exports of somewhere between 70 to 100 doses to be economical for you, the breeder, but also economical for the purchaser on the other side of the world as well. But also with embryos is very similar. You know, inquiries for embryos, 5 or 6 embryos is not really cost effective because of the quarantine periods that are involved, the blood tests, and the vet paperwork, and the semen freezing and embryo freezing costs. So when dealing with exports, AB Europe and the other companies are here to hold your hand. That's probably the most daunting task of an export. We will provide timetables for the whole, you know, the whole export. We will give you a step-by-step guide of when you need to do blood tests, when rams need to come in for collection, and all the paperwork that's needed. So we try to make this process as simple as possible. AB Europe also has good connections all over the world with regards to vet practices, semen storage facilities, AI and ET providers. So we can help with that package of when your client purchases the embryos, of then putting them in contact with similar companies to ourselves or AI and ET providers that can then help them with the rest of the process that's involved. There is 2 ways exports come to us, one through the breeder within the UK, but we also have a number of breeders from overseas that come direct to us. And this is also most probably one of the bigger problems that we have at the moment, is finding breeders that are interested in taking part in exports, especially within some of the smaller breeds that we have, where numbers are not so big and people are quite daunted to buy the task of doing export. So this is equally, you know, from this chat today, is if people are interested in export, don't be frightened to put your name above the parapet, that we will sort of help you through the whole process. The future, as there is new markets opening up, and a huge new market that will open up is the US embryos, both for the terminal sires and the heritage breeds. South America, More and more South American markets are opening up as we speak, and genetics will almost be going into new countries such as Paraguay and Argentina early in this year. And there is also demand for all types of breeds, whether pedigree and some of the UK composite breeds, but also new breeds all the time. You know, we've had a first real inquiry for a Derbyshire Gritstones this week. So as, you know, breeds become more and more in the tabloids and more with people's social media, Facebook pages, the requirement for these breeds becomes more and more. So really, yeah, thank you very much for listening. There's my contact details at the bottom, and thank you for NSA inviting us along this morning. And as Charles has said, we'll have a Q&A session at the end of Edward's talk.
Thank you, Geraint. Very, very interesting and a fantastic insight into the work that you and your company do and other companies to actually enable the genetics to flow around the world when breeders get the contact. And it is that case of putting it between both the purchaser and the provider, and you're the person, you are the company and others like it that can provide that for there. So thank you very much for that. As Geraint said, keep the questions coming. I've got a few in the Q&A box already, but I don't want to have to ask questions to the panel for 3/4 of an hour on my own, because by the time I get there, my brain won't be able to cope with it, and I'll run out of very, very sensible and interesting things to ask them. So I'm relying on the assembled audience to do that. I see there are some good questions in already, but please keep them flowing so that we can have a really interesting discussion and debate after the final presentation. Which leads me into Edward Adamson, who, as I mentioned earlier, is the NSA Regional Development Manager for Northern Ireland, but more importantly farms several breeds of pedigree sheep and has personal experience in trying to and actually achieving export of those genetics. So I'll hand over to Edward to try and update us and give us an insight in what's required to make these sort of things happen on the ground at a farm level.
Well, thank you, Charles, for that introduction. I'm just getting my slide. It's really not as grand as some of the others. It's just reminders to me as to what I'm talking about. I probably don't have anything different to say than the other speakers, other than maybe I'm coming from a breeder side of things. I don't consider myself any expert in this at all, but have been through it. Again, I suppose Charles maybe stole the thunder of my first slide a bit about, then why the UK? And it's, we are recognised, I think it's probably the country with the most breeds there is. We have over 60 pure breeds, and I think there'll be another 30 odd hybrid crossbreds with recognised names. Our breeders do excel at breed improvement. There's no other breeders in the world that can they see what they want in a breed and that breed's particular qualities, and they do enhance it. Rob had a set of slides at the beginning. I didn't really read his slides. I was just looking around the photographs that he had. And it makes a UK breeder proud to be involved in this business. The examples of sheep that we have, and that does catch the eye of the rest of the world. It has been touched on about the veterinary requirements. To most of breeders, probably, there are some breeders out there who are old hands at this job, but most of us are relatively new to it and think about all the paperwork, EHCs, export health certificates. Why on earth do we need all these things? But if you think of it the other way around, we wouldn't want to bring things into our flocks that we don't already have. And we've got to understand that there's requirements the other countries need, and we have to try our best to supply healthy, disease-free stock. that maybe at this time would be one of the things that if anybody is thinking about taking on the role of supplying genetics around the world, you have to look at, there was a list of health schemes there that is available in the UK, and you need to be thinking about joining those. Maybe not as onerous a task as you think, but you have to sit down and look at those. Do you want to be part of those schemes? Also been said about mainstream breeds is the ones we think of as where all the big money is and all the movement. But this last few years, yeah, minority and heritage breeds, it's just surprising how many of them that the requests come in for. So everybody's in there with the same chance, I think. To get involved then a bit more, you've heard from Geraint and Rob, actually people out there who are very useful, very willing to help, and make use of them all. Your probably inquiries to individuals will come through the breed societies or yourself as individuals. And I would say if you have an inquiry that you don't want to follow up, yeah, please try and pass it on to your breed society or someone who would, because all these inquiries help whatever particular breed you're involved in, if we can move stock. Geraint is an example of specialist sheep breeding companies out there who have a lot more expertise in these things than we as breeders do. I don't think that as breeders we don't want to get into the technicalities of all these things. Pass it on and let the experts take charge of those things. I've listed the other companies as Rob had done there that are involved, and in my experience, all very helpful, impossible without them. They're the guys who know what to be doing, and yeah, get their help. National Sheep Association, yeah, that's probably why I'm here today, just my involvement in this side of things. No expert, but the NSA, maybe if they don't have an expert within their own body, we know someone who is an expert, and contacts with all those people who would know what they're at. We also have an involvement in all the royal shows. This year there's a couple of NSA sheep events. Scotch Sheep is early June, and the main sheep event in Malvern is, I think it's about the third week in July. In the past, and hopefully it'll happen again as COVID wanes a bit, if you have interest from someone who wants to come over, the NSA events are always a really good place to bring visitors over. We will try and put visits together for you and help along the way. Don't be frightened to contact someone within NSA. Yeah, how to inform the world. If the world doesn't come to you, do you want to go out to the world? My only photograph is that one on the left. A young innocent fella there 29 years ago won the interbreed at Balmoral show. That's the bit I remember about it, but if you would notice in the photograph, it's just a by the way, but that was mid-May in Northern Ireland. Whenever sort of a landmark summer arrives, the sun usually comes out and cattle get out to the fields. But if you notice, there's a few drowned rats there, umbrellas up on waterproofs. That particular time in the second week in May, the snow came on and it was horrendous weather. But I remember it because we had just won the interbreed sheep section at Balmoral. That led to an inquiry from US, And in those days, that photo was taken by a camera, probably a film developed, and it got round in the agricultural press. Whereas nowadays, that particular part's so much easier with modern technology. You can take a photograph and it'll be around the world in minutes, really. Your options, if you want to go out there, you could have your own website, social media. There's various platforms are really wonderful things there to get that around. It is, make no mistake, it is a challenge, and I'm sure there's some out there who like a challenge and don't like to be beaten. So it's not a quick, easy one. It's a long-term thing to get involved in, and I would consider modesty to be a virtue, but in this case, when you're out selling your stock, you've got to highlight your flock achievements. Nobody else is going to do it for you. You have plenty of photographs of your own stock that you can avail of. And yeah, you bum yourself up because nobody else will. It was mentioned earlier about Signet, and some of these other countries and buyers won't be traveling to the UK maybe to see the stock. All they see is photographs, but some of them look at performance figures more so than the photographs. And very useful tool to have is if you can supply performance figures of your stock, that will just swing them your way if you've got those figures. Not everyone has those. Again, it's back to this. There's a lot of things, a lot of ducks to line up if you're getting involved in this. Not easy, but there is rewards there. As much maybe a sense of achievement, if nothing else, on I think that initial inquiry that I got for Ile de France to the USA helped to set up the breed in the USA. So quite proud of that one. When you do get inquiries, they are from some foreigners whose don't really grasp the English language that well. You may get a bit garbled messages, but treat every inquiry as if you're on the verge of a sale. You just can't tell whether they're genuine or not, but treat them all as genuine inquiries. An example, I had a message asking about embryos. This was only a couple of weeks ago, asking about the price of embryos, and again, straight to Garant to find out what would it cost. Got an idea of the prices, sent it to them, and then they wanted a catalogue of, I suppose, facts, figures, and photos. So I said, yes, if I think there's a genuine inquiry, I'll get together some of that stuff. So the reply again in his best English, which was better than my English is not good either, but any languages I'm not good at. But in his best English, he replied that, why would I be asking if I'm not interested? So that really brought it home to me. You must take every inquiry as genuine, and if it's not for you, if you think that there's somebody else in the UK on different breed or a different breeder, don't let it go away. Try and pass it on to someone who would be interested, because each animal, each bit of germplasm that goes out of the UK, it's good for our sheep industry. I think that's just from my breeder perspective. Any questions, yeah, we'd be happy to answer them afterwards with the rest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Edward. Really, really interesting and fascinating insight into actually what it entails to provide these genetics and our sheep to people in the rest of the world. And as Edward sort of succinctly put it, treat every customer very seriously, treat every inquiry seriously, and you never know what it leads to. But I think it was also very pertinent that he mentioned as soon as he had an inquiry, he spoke to Geraint to get an idea of what it would entail and put a pricing structure in place. And I think that's very, very, very true. People are interested out there, and there are some that will definitely be put off by the cost, but others who are serious about it, it won't deter them, and then they'll continue that discussion. So thank you very much, Edward. That's really brought to conclusion the presentations from our three speakers, who have all in their own way sort of given everybody a very good insight into what's needed to able to facilitate export of sheep and semen and embryos. Now, I have got some questions coming in, so I'll put them out there. The first one was from Josh Brook, and it was what are the main breeds that are being exported, and are they going for commercial farming? I don't know who wants to take that one.
So, to be honest, we're sending the main terminal size at the moment: Texels, Suffolks, Charolais. But also, you know, with the American market, there's Shetlands, Kerry Hills, Teeswaters, Wensleydales, and then, you know, to New Zealand and South America, we're sending Hampshires and Exlanas. So there's a wide variety of breeds going, both for pedigree breeding, but also to the likes of New Zealand to go into commercial farming as well at that point. So, you know, the sales are going to both markets.
Okay.
Could I just add to that you know, there is quite an expense in getting this germplasm out to other countries, so most of it will be going to pedigree breeders. It's not a cheap option, and yeah, you treat your customers courteously because they're actually spending a lot of money to take on your breeding.
Okay, right. Day Tucker, are there protections of our intellectual properties in terms of our sheep breeding programs? That's a fascinating question. Somebody's got a very deep thinking mind on with that one. Would anybody like to take and answer it? Or I'm going to have to pick on somebody.
I'll give the simple answer, which is no, not really. Once we've sold these genetics overseas, obviously they're at liberty to do with them as they wish. And if you compare the American breeds as are now that were originally from the UK, and compare them with the breeds that we have over here, and I could give you the Border Leicester as a good example, but they're same with Hampshires and others. They look very different. There is no legislation or any regulations that mean they have to stick to it. We do have, of course, that some sort of not influence, but there's through the zootechnical legislation. There's some societies require that their fellow societies are part of zootechnical, and so there will be a little bit of cooperation through that. And then finally, I suppose some of the countries that we're exporting to, and this is dealt with yesterday in the prep for this discussion today, is that we need to be supporting the people to whom we've sold our genetics. It's not advantageous to the British livestock industry to sell them the product and then have them waste away or be unsuccessful in their embryo transfers or in their semen programs.
Maybe I could just say that, you know, these buyers are coming to the UK. They obviously like our genetics and what we're producing. So those particular importers to their particular country like what we have sent over, and hopefully if we stay in contact with them, it will help to influence whatever they're doing in their country. Obviously, there's others out there, as Rob said, you know, when we look at photographs of the US sheep, that's a totally different animal than what we have. The fact that they're coming looking for our stock, it must be the qualities that we have that attracts them to it, and hopefully influence their own.
Okay. Tim White, a question from him through the chat. What was the total volume of UK ovine germplasm exported in the last 12 months? Does anybody know that? Could anybody stab a guess at it?
I could stab a guess that it would most probably be 12 to 15,000 straws of semen, perhaps, and 2,000 embryos.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. I mean, I say it's very, and it's very, I think from my knowledge, the prices are always different. So I don't think anybody collates that information. I don't know whether, to my knowledge, because they're private, they're usually private and individual sales. I know there's government support. So sorry, Tim, I see you've put up what value in pounds, but how long is a bit of string? The semen can be anywhere, it can be any range, and the embryo is the same. So it's virtually impossible for anybody to put a financial value over it all, but it's maybe something that we possibly could look into when we are talking with government to try and boost our case and looking for further support, I suppose.
Charles, I'll just say there is actually a database run by, I think it's a European or World Health probably, which does actually show commodities values sold for all countries around the world. But the unfortunate thing for the question is that it actually would have genetics, and it wouldn't separate out cattle genetics from sheep genetics. But there are tables showing that sort of thing if you want to get into it.
Okay, thank you very much. A question from Christopher Lloyd. This is slightly different, but hopefully somebody can give us the answer. Are we able to import from Iceland now? And if so, what does the exporter need to do to qualify? Does anybody know that about Iceland?
The only thing I know about Iceland is pre-Brexit, we weren't able to import because to do with Brucella melitensis testing, that they were classified as free and our government wouldn't accept it and required a test. But that was back early last year sort of thing, so or late 2020. So, but I haven't heard of anything more since then, or if there's been any update on the certificate since that point.
Okay, thank you very much. Another from Day Tucker. It's a point and then a question at the end of it. Supporting the source of globally valued UK genetic resilience is vital. The source is on our hill farms. They should no longer be regarded as unproductive in inverted commas. So the question is, are they being sufficiently supported, preserved and protected? Great, incredible question. Thank you, Day. Who'd like to start with that one? Edward, you've touched on the native genetics, so I'll throw the ball into your court for a start. And that
Right.
Are they being sufficiently supported, preserved and protected? That's the question.
Well, maybe in the past they haven't been supported. They have to stand on their own feet financially. But as we go forward now, there's different environmental attitudes coming along the way, and maybe we could see more support for them in the past. I'm afraid that they've had to stand on their own feet, and maybe the main hill breeds are fine, but some of those lesser minority breeds have depended on dedicated breeders to keep them there. But I would hope maybe in the future that would change, and that government realizes the benefits of these breeds.
Anybody else anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I can just in terms, because I'm guessing it's there may be part of that is about hill farming in general, but there may be about hill breeds and pedigree hill breeds. So I'll go into that side of things. There within UKECP and UK Tag, we are pushing for any breed that wants to export and any breed that importers want. And so, for example, I have been trying to put together a slideshow of breeds that we can offer from the UK to take to trade fairs and just put on in the background, going through all the different breeds that we have. And it would include heritage breeds, hill breeds, because I think we have scope to promote all of them. But I will say that out of 30 breed societies that I contact for photographs of their breeds that I could put into the slideshow, 6 or 7 reply. And so it came down to part of the slide that I was saying is that we'll promote you within UKEP and UK Tag. We're there to promote, but we have to have input from the breed societies and the breeders as well. And that's why you see certain breeds are more represented than others. It's usually because either the breed society or people within the society are actively pushing themselves rather than hoping that somebody will throw a bit to them.
Could I also ask that, or answer, that NSA this last couple of years have been putting together a program for British heritage breeds and trying to support those breeds and trying to develop maybe a
Unless I
niche.
brought it in, it's on the pile of clothes just inside the door.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, trying to promote that there is a niche market for some of these breeds, not only the breed, but the area they come from. And that's an NSA initiative that's coming to fruition at the minute.
Okay, thank you. Right, a question from Phil Stocker, just to prove that he's keeping his BDI on us and making sure that we do as we're supposed to. How important or what opportunities exist for post-sale advice and guidance, ideally pre-sale too? His comment is, our reputation won't be helped by them not working because their management requirements aren't understood where they're exported to. Really fascinating question. Can anybody answer that, please?
Well, I'll take that one to start with, but just in my opinion, I've been lucky enough to get around quite a number of countries in the world, and some of them are technically very good, but there's others who come over to the UK and they go to our shows, the ones that I've mentioned earlier there, and they see the top stock and think that's what they want. But it's totally different when you go to their country, totally different set of management skills. And really, some countries would need to have a package which included the management requirements of these animals. It's well, in any business, it's a bad attitude just to take their money and run. We need to follow up and try and make sure that our stock do well wherever they go.
Okay. Geraint, I think you want to say something.
Yeah, no, just also from a veterinary point of view, I think it's, important that we provide a service of, training these guys after they've spent the money on semen and embryos to implant them and make sure that they're doing the best job they can there. There'd be nothing worse than sending 100 embryos to a country and they get their local vet to try and put them in and end up with, a 10% hold rate for their investment. So it's also important that us as companies, ourselves and the other companies in the UK, ensure that these guys are sending it to people that are reputable and able to do the process, thawing and implanting the embryos or AI in sheep. So I think it's, there's a management issue from the farmer's point of view, but it's also ensuring that we're sending these, embryos to these countries and there's people within those countries able to do the practice. There's no point in sending embryos to a country if there's nobody within that country that can do it. So, it's also making sure that there's a complete service there for them.
Okay, thank you very much. Did you want to anything, Rob, or I think Edward and Geraint have covered it quite well. Right, the next question, I've got 2 or 3 people all on the sort of same sort of area, so I'll read them out. First, from our good friend JP Garnier. Good to see that you're keeping your eye on us as well, JP, and long time no speak, but hope you're well. Where are we at with the border post for breeding sheep to the EU? There should be strong political push from NSA, NFU, MBA and others to ensure that the UK state fulfills its duty to keep markets open. Also, Peter Baber, when will the Channel border post open? Is there anything we can do to encourage this to happen? Over to anybody who wants to. Rob, do you want to start on that one with your veterinary knowledge and expertise, and then anybody else chip in?
Yeah, thank you very much. Good question, and so frustrating. And Phil might actually comment as well, and if he's still there. There has been huge pressure from NFU, NSA, to try and get this border control post open. And the issue is really, I suppose, that it's got to be a border control post in Calais, and they're just not that interested. There has to be a financial benefit to them, and there are other things taking priority for them. There was a company that did get, was in touch with the NFU, and I believe that, and don't quote me on it, please, but because I'm trying to remember, but I think they were looking for something like 18 million pounds or euros to set up the border control post within Calais. And they wanted people within the UK to fund that, so that, because of it's our benefit, we want to send the livestock across, so we should fund it. So they were looking for 18 million pounds or euros to set this up. But of course, at the first sniff of an FMD outbreak, or a blue tongue or Schmallenberg, or any disease that would stop export, they would shut that border control post. And so those people who had put in that 18 million pounds in the hope of using it year on year and gaining some benefits from it would suddenly have nothing in return for their investment. And I'm afraid that's the latest that I have, is that was the discussion. As I say, Phil may come in on a chat to say he knows more, but that was the last discussion I heard.
Okay, thank you. I can't see anything in the chat from Phil, but from my own personal perspective, I know there is still interest there. People are sort of pushing. Having been involved in discussions only last week about UK border posts, and the government being incredibly keen to set them up and make sure that there's no impingement to trade coming in, and they're working incredibly hard to get a UK border post set up in Kent to come in through Dover. There's hopefully one on the west coast of Wales and up in Scotland as well, so that we can facilitate that movement, especially east to west into northern Southern Ireland. Is our UK government's sort of position on this at the minute. They are aware of the situation in Calais, but basically it's more of it's for the French side to sort out, and people, they will try and put pressure on and help us, but that was the official answer last week. And as Rob said, there are people looking to do it as a commercial enterprise, but at the minute it's unviable for them to do so, and it is incredibly frustrating for people who are wanting to put live sheep across that route into Europe, because as all the speakers have said, there is quite a strong demand, especially from Eastern Europe, to take our stock. But unfortunately, there has to be a means, a way of getting them. There is potentially other ways and means, but they're very expensive and very time consuming. And at the minute, I think people are shying away from that. I mean, Tim had a further question, which was, we've spent a lot of time talking about semen embryos. What about live exports? Are there any other markets apart from Europe that maybe we could put live sheep to? Does anybody know that one, please?
Yeah, I can come in there again. There are live exports still taking place. One sheep breeder in Scotland recently flew sheep to Georgia. In Europe, Eastern Europe, there are calls for huge numbers of sheep, live sheep, to Russia, and there have been sheep already heading out there in the past. So yes, there are big calls for live export. It comes down to the transport issues and how they're going to get there, but there are definitely calls for them in different parts of the world. Sorry.
Can you hear or not? I think you can. It's Phil here. I mean, you probably can't see me, but just to come in on what Rob was saying, now I've put something in the chat, but what we do know is that planning still hadn't been approved for the Quilivia company that was looking at this live animal border control post just outside of Calais. And it's not until that plan has been approved that they can then put a business case together to see whether it can work and what sort of investment they need. We still haven't got a clue what the gate fees might be for going through that border control post. So we're still some way away from that live animal facility actually being in place. What we have done over the last 2 weeks in our weekly e-news, in the NSA's weekly e-news, is to put a call out there for people who are interested in that route, that trade, to get in touch, because it'd be really good for us to have a list of people so that we can use that as a bit more of a mandate. And we're trying to put pressure on DEFRA and others to get this happening, and also to make sure we can keep in touch with people as and when things happen. So, you know, if people can just send us an email or phone the office if they've got an interest in this trade or if they're involved, it'd be really helpful. And we're working very closely with the NFU and the NBA and the NPA, the National Pig Association. This it would be an all species live animal facility, you know, if and when it gets underway. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Phil. Appreciate it.
Regarding live exports, again, I'm based in Northern Ireland, slightly different than the rest of the UK. We have a Northern Ireland protocol, gets in the way of some things, but it does mean that we have a route via the south of Ireland into Europe, and I'm not sure of the exact numbers, and whether Rob knows them or not, but somewhere between 200 and 300 Suffolks and a few other breeds have gone via the south of Ireland into Europe. It probably is 300 when I add the other breeds in. So yeah, it would be a long and arduous route, but it can be done, subject to meeting all the veterinary requirements.
Thank you for that, Edward. And yeah, that's what I was alluding to. And I knew a few had been done. I wasn't aware the numbers were as much as that. But as you say, it is a long and arduous route. And hopefully, we need to try and keep the pressure on to keep that short straight from Dover to Calais open as quickly as possible and give us that opportunity there. Patsy Hunter, what is the most popular breed for semen embryo exports, and how do people see that changing in the coming years when America opens up fully? Will there be any change, do you think, Geraint?
Texels most probably would be the predominant breed at the moment for exports of semen and embryos, followed by Valleys. With regards to the States, as that opens up, I think there will be other breeds that will become more popular as they try to, one, bring in new breeds, such as Charolais. I think that they will become quite a popular breed into the States. And also some of the hill breeds, you know, there's a lot of demand at the moment for Cheviots and Blackies moving forward. And then again, the heritage and the minority breeds, there'll be a lot of demand for embryos from those sorts of breeds as breeders, you know, try to improve the flocks that they've got over there.
Okay, thank you. A comment in the questions from JP Garnier. AHDB BLG, British Livestock Genetics, used to collect export data. The data is available under customer codes, he says. I think if people want to delve into it more, in reply to Tim White's sort of earlier question about sort of total value. I have no more sort of questions. So I'd just like to throw one to the panel. Oh, sorry, Rob, you want to comment?
Charles, I'll just say if there was time, if you run out of questions, I'll share the screen on the APHA form finder if you needed to.
Okay, do that. If no more coming in a minute or two, then I'll sort of, if we have just got a few minutes left. But there's one I sort of wanted to sort of put to you about promotion. Edward mentioned it, and several of you have sort of mentioned promoting our sort of genetics and how we do it, and self-promotion is important. In all three of your experience, do you think there is a change in the way we promote, and is social media becoming the essential tool in promoting British sheep genetics globally?
I would say it's a very useful tool, probably is essential, but I've had the opportunity through UK Tag to get out to some of those shows, and I think that personal contact out in other countries just can't be beaten. Face to face, with other breeders. It is essential. Unfortunately, I'm not sure whether we can carry it on or not. It's becoming more difficult, I think.
Okay.
I would say social media is moving forward with the American market and the South American market. Social media will be a big tool for people selling livestock and genetics. There will be, is their main tool of finding animals and different bits. So I think a lot more sourcing of animals or inquiries will come through the social media way, at that point. So, breeders ensuring that they've got up-to-date photos of stock and stuff is a good tool for marketing their genetics.
I suppose it has, social media has come into its own since COVID arrived, because it's been the only means of marketing we have. And Garrett can say, that I think our exports haven't waned throughout COVID. We've managed to keep going.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting fact and a really positive that there is demand out there for UK sheep genetics, and people will still want to access them. And that was what I was trying to sort of draw out. Do in this changing world and in a post-COVID world, do you then think that we will have to look at sort of different ways of sort of working to promote what we've got, or can we just build on what we've done everything in the past?
It's a bit like this webinar today. 2 years ago, would we have thought that this is how we would be holding a meeting? COVID has brought on new ways of doing things.
Yeah.
And they have arrived, not in the manner we would have wanted, but they are here now and they're proving useful tools.
Okay. Right, thank you for that. Rob, did you want to share your screen then and just run through this APHA fact finder, so that if people are interested, it gives them just a bit of a run through in the sort of those very first steps once they've had an inquiry and how they go about it, please?
Yeah, thanks, Charles. I'll just do it very briefly, let me just, sorry, I have to just get rid of that so I can get to the screen. There we go. So, yeah, this is APHA form finder. We'll bring this up, or you can see the web address is gov.uk/export health certificates with hyphens in between. But if enter APHA form finder, and this is all the export certificates, all the 2018 of them that exist for commodities around the world from the APHA. So your best bet is you get an inquiry, and I'm going to pick one right at near the top because it's just easier to show you. We're going to get an inquiry from Argentina, and the question is, can we export sheep semen to Argentina? So click on Argentina, and then just come down here to commodity type, and in commodity type click germplasm, and then on the right you'll see the 5 export certificates for germplasm to Argentina, and you'll see here that there is an export certificate for sheep semen to Argentina. Click on that one and head down here into the sections, and you'll see notes for guidance. They're useful. They're actually for the vets who are going to sign the certificates, but they're actually useful for you to have a look at as well, because it will sort of tell you what sort of things are required. But then up here in section A, you've got the application that you can complete online to send in. And you've got the certificate here that you will get back once you've filled in all of that information. And you can check down here when it was agreed, so that you'll know just how current it is. Some of them may be old, shouldn't be probably these days, because this is a relatively new system. So I don't think they'll have put the ancient ones on, but it is worthwhile just checking, because these things are probably only really active for about 5 years before the importing country changes its mind. But you'll see that there's different support certificates that are required. So that Scrapie support certificate will need to be completed as well. You'll get help with all of this through your vet. But this just gives you an example of how you can get the information. And if you go down to here, all the notes for guidance to the vet, which, as I say, can be useful to you as an exporter, because you can check into these and find out how likely it is that your flock is going to be able to export. So hopefully that's just a little brief run through it. As Geraint has said earlier, and Edward, to be fair, that if you have any queries about semen export or genetics, Geraint AB and the other companies have done this before. They know what they'll require, and they'll give you a program. But that works just as true for live exports. So if you have a requirement for live exports, you can go to that that website and see what will be required of your sheep before they can even be considered for export.
Could I just say, back up Rob on that one? If well, most of your inquiries to breeders may not come to anything, but the first place I do go to is that form finder to find what the regulations are, because those people making the inquiries, most of them don't actually know what the regulations are. That gets you an example of a health certificate. It's quite easy then to download that and send it off to them, and they then know as well as you do what's expected. That's the first place to go. The one before Geraint, that is the one you go to first, Geraint second. Or again, UKIP, BLG for help. It's out there, and I think you're all very good at helping and steering us in the right direction.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for that update, Rob. It just gives people a very brief insight into what's there and gives them a chance. But I think the one thing that I've just gleaned from that conversation, if people have inquiries, there is plenty of help out there. And even if the first port of call is the NSA at Malvern, if they don't know the answers, they can put you in touch with people who do. And there is a tremendous amount of knowledge and expertise and experience out there to help people fulfill these potential orders. And I've been fortunate enough to do some in the past, and I've not always taken out the help and advice I should have done. So from personal experience, I've struggled through and muddled on my own, but actually if I'd have asked other people who have got more experience, it would have been a much easier process. So I think that's a lesson that I've learned from my mistakes in the past. But I think as time presses, I will have to draw today's webinar to a close. So it remains for me to thank the panelists of Rob, Geraint and Edward for their absolutely fascinating insight into this subject, giving it a real depth of knowledge and understanding in each of their parts, and hopefully they've conveyed that to the listening audience, and hopefully people have learned from their ability to communicate their experiences with us. I should also once again like to thank Roy Thorns for their continued support of the NSA breakfast webinars. Now, Sean, I can see you can either nod or shake your head here, because on my briefing notes, I've got two contradicting bits of information here to say that remind people that this is the last webinar and we're going to take a break, or that there is one on the first of the month following every month. Which is correct? We are taking a break, are we?
We're taking a break for a month. The next one will be in April.
Okay, that's fine. So sorry for anybody for that confusion, but so that everybody who's watching who are keen to support the NSA breakfast webinars, the next one will be on the first Wednesday in April. And so thank you everybody for in the audience for participating and joining us to make it a success it has. And I'll now bring this to a conclusion. Wish everybody a really successful rest of the day, and hopefully you've all learned something from today's proceedings. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.